Howdy, howdy. We are live on another Friday night. At least I think I'm live. I gotta check my pulse. I have been ran ragged for the last few days, but I think we're doing this. I think this is Friday, right? This is the Tex-Trek stream, right? I'm in the right place, right, Dave?
And it feels like it. Are you feeling like an O'Brien must suffer episode right now? Is that where you're at?
Yeah. Yeah, that man, I don't know. I wouldn't even wish this on O'Brien. It's pretty hard. Not that I wish him harm, but people know he can take it. So, but yeah, I don't know if I'm the man O'Brien is, but I am the man who's ready to talk about some Star Trek with all of y'all and to talk about Strange New Worlds and some other recent news. So I see people are already chatting away in our live audience. I think there's a lot of eager people around. So Dave, let's go ahead and get the show started. I'm Fathery,
This is Dave.
and this is Tex Trek.
Engage.
Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 246th installment of the Tex Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we take a deep look at Star Trek old and new. And tonight we're talking about Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 2, Episode 2, Ad Astra Per Aspera, written by Dana Horgan and directed by Valerie Weiss. And there's going to be a lot to talk about in this episode. I see it's already stirred up a lot of conversation online, and it's kind of a return to a traditional, good old fashioned Star Trek courtroom episode.
What's the TOS big one?
The big episode about a court martial.
Yep, that would be the one.
It's
So
called court martial.
yeah,
it was
thanks,
it was a
Father.
TOS episode that had a TNG style name.
Not where is my brother in the midst of the court martial?
Yeah, yeah, or something like that.
And then of course, Measure of a Man, and there's several others. But those are some of the touchstones.
Yeah, yeah,
But
they
I
definitely
think we're
drew
also
a lot of inspiration from those for this episode.
we'll also clearly be talking about a little bit of Trek news that needs to be talked about.
Yeah, well, we like to recap the big news every week. So, speaking of that, we should get on with the housekeeping. I have to give a big thank you and shout out to the Tex Trek Patreon supporters who make the show possible. So thank you so much, Starfleet, Sohel, Cake is Eternal, Crazy Dutchie, Joanne Robertson, John Dog, Geek Filter, Quarkspar, Ben Ginium, Stephanie Durantes, Matthew Averett, and our anonymous supporters. We like to do a monthly watch party with our patrons. We just did a fun one celebrating a patron's birthday. If you come in at the Bridge Crew level, you get to pick what we watch in the watch party on your birthday month, and you can even do two-parters or movies. So Ben Ginium thought it'd be a good idea for us to watch the DS9 two-parter Improbable Cause and The Die Is Cast. We did that a few days ago. July 15th, we're having our July watch party, and Bridge Crew patron, I don't know if she wants me to say who she is, but has selected a Deep Space, no, a Voyager episode, Flashback.
Yeah.
But we're also going to watch the Excelsior scenes from Star Trek 6. So we're going to see Sulu command the Excelsior in Star Trek 6 and see him command the
Oh,
Excelsior
yeah.
in Voyager.
I like that. We had a lot of fun with the Voyager two-parter a couple months back.
Yeah.
What was that
Yeah,
called?
so time
I stumped you.
Yeah, you did.
That's all right. I'm looking it up.
The Sarah Silverman episodes.
Yes.
God damn it.
Future's End?
Yes, Future's End, parts 1 and 2.
Yeah,
I don't know why I couldn't remember that. I had to say it like 1,000 times.
Father, there's like 800 plus episodes of Star Trek. It's okay.
It's for people who don't know, like my day job is like actively trying to murder me. I'm having to work like a shitload of overtime. So I apologize. I'm going to be in a cranky mood. Probably it's going to be worse next week because I'm going to have to work a shitload this weekend and next week. And they want me in the office until 6 p.m. So an hour before the show starts Friday. And it's pretty terrible. But hopefully it gets easier after that.
Yeah, that sucks.
But it helps pay the bills, so we can keep doing this. This is my real job. This is the job I find fulfilling. Right. It must be weird if you could like pay your bills and like your job. That always baffles me. But I know some people live like that, so I'm very happy for anyone.
I have at least a portion of that.
I've never worked anywhere where I wasn't like, I hate this organization and I hope it just gets destroyed. But anyways, enough about me though. Let's talk about some Star Trek news. There was a comic book announcement this week. We're going to get to see John Luke at the Academy. That's coming out in September.
It looks fun. I like that the art's a little stylized. It kind of has a little youthful, energetic kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, we'll see. I think the art's actually gonna hurt it. I don't think the Trek readers are gonna gravitate to that. But I don't know. I might be wrong. It's good that they're experimenting, so we'll find out. I'd love. I
think we need to see what the vibe of it is like. I don't think I want like a photorealistically drawn young Picard. I think that this is. I bet they're gonna want a vibe that's more like kind of like that at Legion of Superheroes for people who know DC. It's their far-flung future superheroes.
Yeah, when I talked to the Star Trek comic editor Heather Antos recently, one of the things she talked about was like they want to publish books that comic book readers who might not necessarily be Star Trek fans or not really dedicated Star Trek fans, but they would like cross over into the Star Trek comics. And this definitely seems like an exercise in that philosophy.
Yeah, that philosophy.
I don't know if it'll work, but I wish all the people at IDW good luck, and we'll see what happens. I don't think it's like the direction I would have gone in, but I'm still curious about trying it, and I hope that I enjoy it myself.
It was pretty high on my list of if they were going to announce Trek stuff. This is one that interests me. It's both. I think it's got both commercial appeal because of Picard, just innately. And arguably presages the Academy show they're doing, but through a very specific lens, reveals something, an era we don't know about him. The cocky, well, we know a little, the cocky younger Picard.
Right. The opposite of Kirk. If people who want to choose to believe Kirk was like a big dork when he was a youngster, but then became like this maverick cowboy. Like Picard did the opposite. He started off as the rogue, and then he became like the mature statesman. I
have a feeling though he was like a roguish intellectual though, a little, like at least a little bit there. But so Father, but I mentioned it to say
he was he's like the asshole jock who's like also like makes like straight A's, and like that was like his brother's whole thing was like you were good at everything. You're like the straight A student. You were the best athlete. You were like. He's like the wonder kid. Yeah. Which is kind of weird because normally you don't focus on that guy as your protagonist. Normally when you're telling these stories about young people, you go with
the underdog.
The underdog. But what if, I don't know, maybe he arrives at the Academy and everyone's like, oh, you thought you were hot shit back in France, back in La Barre, but, we're the best of the best. Everyone's a fucking badass here, so.
I mean, that's definitely a story to tell, and I know most every, kind of nerdy, smart person... either when they go to high school or college and they really see some competition.
Oh yeah.
Kind of experiences that.
Yeah.
So, but yes, you're not to use a term that's a little tender right now, but Picard was something of a prodigy.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, our other Starfleet youngsters, there is some news that came out today, day of recording, that Star Trek Prodigy will be ending and also leaving Paramount Plus. So just to clarify a few things, I think there's some confusion online. So I don't know, Dave. Where should we begin with that one?
So I've only had time to skim a few things. But let me ask the burning question: is Prodigy gone forever?
Well, that would appear to be the case. However, there's
I mean, gone
still
from existence, no more stories ever.
there's 20 episodes that
Hmm.
are still coming out. So, if people recall, when Prodigy was originally announced, it was an order for 20 episodes, and they're going to do 10 episode seasons. However, when that was in production or pre-production, I don't remember like the exact uh, time of year, whenever it was, but at some point a decision was made like, oh, we like the way that this looks. We actually want to extend that order from 20 episodes to 40 episodes and release it as two 20 episode seasons, which is
Hmm.
that's already kind of confusing because Prodigy comes out in like these 10 episode batches. I mean, the first time it was just 5 here and then 5 there, but I mean, they consider 20 episodes a season. So out of seasons 1 and season 2 that have been ordered, that are, on the way, we've only gotten half of that. We've only gotten 20 of our 40 Prodigy episodes that, we've been promised that we are definitely going to receive. The thing that has changed as of today is that those remaining 20 episodes will not come out on Paramount Plus. The show will have to find another home. Uh, it is still, owned by Paramount Global, the large, formerly known as Viacom, big parent company that owns Paramount Plus, that owns Nickelodeon. But they're following a trend that David Zaslav at Discovery Warner and Disney has I guess popularized, and that is slashing content in order to cut cost. And they really seem to go after animated shows because I guess
Hmm.
like that's less popular to watch. So had Bruce Timm, who's a legend in the world of animation, created what a lot of people consider like the best animated show ever with Batman the Animated Series in the '90s, returning to do a new Batman animated series. And the most popular intellectual property that Warner Brothers owns is probably Batman. That's bigger than Harry Potter and Game of Thrones put together, right? And even that, this new Bruce Timm animated Batman show got cut from HBO Max, or Max now as they're calling it. They had to shop that around, and it found a new home on Amazon. So I guess that's what's going to happen here. I hope that Prodigy doesn't end up on Amazon. I don't have Amazon Prime. I don't plan on getting it. I am very disappointed myself because I thought it was a great thing for one streaming service, one platform to be the home of all the Star Trek shows. We finally just got the movies back on there. They leased the movies off to Max for a little bit, and we finally just got all of our movies back, and now we're losing the show because they're not just going to put the new episodes of Prodigy on a different streaming service somewhere, but they're taking the current 20 episodes of Prodigy, season 1 of Prodigy. They're taking it down in a few days from Paramount Plus. So I owned the first 10 episodes on Blu-ray. It got released. There hasn't been any word on if season 1B or season 1 part 2, if
Hmm.
those 10 are getting released anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully, but we also live in an era where not every show gets a physical media release. And with Star Trek Lower Decks season 3, they made that like a print on demand thing. They didn't even like, stock that in stores. You have to like special order a Lower Decks season 3. And I know Lower Decks probably trends much better than Prodigy. So is Prodigy, are they going to get any more Blu-ray releases? I have no idea, but that's very disheartening. I want to have access to every episode of Star Trek at all times. So, it's very, very disappointing. But the good news is, we're going to get the rest of the show. We're going to get to finish the original 40 episode story that they had been planning from before the show had even premiered.
Hmm.
So
They'll probably get to the big conclusion of all the events with who's the daughter of the bad guy?
Gwen.
Gwen, yeah, and I mean, we've already reached a big landmark in that, but that we'll probably see that more or less wrapped, and see the fate of Chakotay and stuff like that.
Yeah, and there is always a possibility the show is only going to be 40 episodes long. Before the show even premiered, that was a likely fate. I always rooted for it to get renewed and get more. But I understand, in the world of animation, what Nickelodeon funded a lot of the show, and they don't tend to buy, more than 2 or 3 seasons of a show. So it was always a very, very likely possibility we would only get 40 episodes and then be done.
Now, Father, is there a possibility that whatever platform it ends up at will pursue further seasons?
I mean, that would have to be a decision between, the production company making the show, which is, I guess, like Nickelodeon animation, but no, because I guess it would go through like Secret Hideout's office, and because they're the ones Paramount has in charge of everything. And it would be possible. I think that is not very likely, though. I think we're just gonna get. Yeah. I mean, it could be like, in 10 years, there's like a bunch of like kids who like grew up on Prodigy, or like we want to like bring it back, and there's like a big Prodigy revival. I mean, how many times has Futurama come back to life?
Right.
But I
Things
don't think
are a little different.
Yeah, I don't think that's very likely for an all ages show that. I don't know. Like, there was a lot of people who like really seemed to believe in it. Alex Kurtzman had a lot of faith in the show. He talked about like, when Into the Spider-Verse made a bunch of money, he's like, we should do a Prodigy movie. Like, a lot of people had like a lot of faith in this. People at Nickelodeon seemed to be really into it. But yeah, we are in an era where the streaming services are trying to cut cost, and because it did work with HBO Max, they turned everyone, got mad, rightfully so, when there's this Batgirl movie they've been promising and stuff, like just gets destroyed. We're just gonna throw away an entire movie for a tax write-off, but it succeeded. They became profitable, so it's not a huge shock that this is happening. I don't like it. I wish that, okay, if Disney is going to have like all the Marvel stuff and all the Star Wars stuff, I can just pay for Disney and have access to all of that. And, all the DC stuff on HBO Max, and have all the Star Trek stuff on Paramount Plus. I think it's worth paying for these different services if you get access to everything. And when they start, shuffling things around, if they do like the revolving door where it's like, oh, we're going to have Star Trek Prodigy on for a few months, then it's going to go away. Maybe it'll come back. Oh, look, Voyager is here. Now Voyager is gone. No, Voyager's on some other platform. Like,
there's no consistency or anything.
If they start doing like that, like it's gonna be aggravating. And I don't know. I feel like I have to pay for Paramount Plus just to have access to all these episodes to cover them. I need to be able to like pull out my phone and look up any episode of Star Trek at any time. Yeah, if they're going to take away those options, I don't know if Paramount Plus is something I'm going to pay for in the months when there's no new Star Trek, and it probably won't be. But yeah, it's an unfortunate direction, and but I mean, the good news is we will see more Prodigy. I just don't know when, I don't know where. I'm also concerned, like, oh, what if it's being released on some other platform at the same time that, say, Discovery or Strange New Worlds or Lower Decks or Starfleet Academy are coming out on Paramount Plus? Then, like, do we try to cover both? Do we? I kind of feel obligated to cover Prodigy and ignore whatever Paramount Plus is doing that week. But I don't know that. I don't know that would be like, cutting off our nose to spite our face, and like drive away our audience when we're not covering the latest shows like we're supposed to. So, yeah, I don't know. It's unsettling and it's disappointing.
Valerie, are there other shows on Paramount Plus? Are the other Trek shows? Do we feel anything there is at risk, or is this?
Yeah, I mean, there was like some other shows, like, I don't know, there's like some Grease spinoff, and among
the Trek shows, just the Trek shows.
Yeah,
is Discovery? Well, we know Discovery is wrapping. Is Strange New Worlds going to end up on another streaming service?
I don't think there's any chance of that happening. They're every promo they do for Paramount Plus, it has like Sylvester Stallone, someone from Comedy Central, and Anson Mount. Like,
right.
Whenever they do like these events in other countries, they were just doing something in London and the UK. Whenever they go to like promote Paramount Plus in a new market, they always show off Strange New Worlds. That's their baby. That's the safest Star Trek show I think we've had in a while. Honestly, I think that's the basket they've put all their eggs in.
How about Lower Decks?
Lower Decks, I think, should be safe just because of Mike McMahon runs a tight ship over there. They seem to be consistently always, like on time, under budget. People are really happy over there. People seem
Mm-hmm.
to like really like working on that show. So that's crazy, right? But yeah, like I mean, Mike McMahon seems to be a really great showrunner and very consistent showrunner, and I think it's gonna be. I mean, we already know that we're getting a fifth season next year. So
Mm-hmm.
I think I would be surprised at this. I mean, that might be the end of Lower Decks. It might be five and done, like Discovery. But I'd be surprised if it didn't get another season or two. But yeah, that's I don't know. I don't know what else to say about Prodigy other than please, if they do any more Blu-ray releases, please buy them so that they keep printing these, so that we can own these, so that we don't have to worry about like, oh no, is this corporation going to take this down from their streaming platform and I won't have access to it? And nice, I know there's ways around that. I know that like the internet has other options, but I like to have like a nice, beautiful, clean presentation that has subtitles, that has like special features, that has like all of that stuff. And I don't know. To me, it's like it's convenient to go like stick a disc into the PlayStation and not like have to deal with like looking for torrents online or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. But I mean, that's me. That's where I come from. I continue to support Prodigy and the creatives over there, and we will cover it. We'll find a way to cover it. And I'm looking forward to the good news. We're only halfway done with Prodigy. If you've been liking Prodigy, if you've liked that journey so far, we're only halfway to the end. We still got that other 20 episodes to go. I'm looking forward to those in the near future.
Yeah, the show had a big space battle that was better than the one on Picard.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
yeah, of course we're gonna stick with it.
honestly, like I know, like Prodigy, it probably hasn't hit like as many of like the highest highs of Star. They haven't done like anything that's been like as beloved as say something like City on the Edge of Forever, or The Inner Light, or something like that. But it's consistently well written on a level that honestly I don't think any other Star Trek show is. I don't know, like how many times have we had like a 20 episode run and like none of it sucked. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty impressive. I would say it's arguably the best written Star Trek show. At least like
It would
arguably the
be
most consistently.
it would be great if it were to get 5 seasons, 6 seasons, 7 seasons, and see what something that starts that strong develops
Yeah.
into. And that's was maybe unlikely before. It's less likely now, but we'll of course be following it as best we can.
Well, sorry to sour the mood for everyone, but we'll move on to our main subject and talk about Strange New Worlds. I'm just going to quickly recap the episode by reading the official synopsis, and then I'll kind of expand on that with spoilers. But the official synopsis reads: Commander Una Chin Riley faces court-martial along with possible imprisonment and dishonorable dismissal from Starfleet, and her defense is in the hands of a lawyer who's also a childhood friend with whom she has a terrible falling out. That is a god-awful, terrible run-on sentence that I hope I never have to see again the rest of my life. But yeah, Una's put on trial. Her childhood friend, who she had a falling out with, defends her. And, at the end of the day, as I predicted last week, status quo restored. Una reinstated as first officer on the Enterprise. But the Federation has perhaps learned a lesson. Maybe this is what makes things a little easier for Dr. Bashir. And speaking of Prodigy, Dal Rl, many decades later in the 24th
Yep.
century.
Yeah, we knew that they had certain constraints in an episode like this, which is that they can't say like, "Oh yeah, at the end of the episode, the law has changed." It's like we know from Trek history that unless they're going to undo some of their biggest shows, they cannot do that.
Yeah. But yeah, it was still, even though I kind of knew how it was going to end, it was still a fun watch. I'm just gonna go ahead and kind of give some of my my broad thoughts on the episode, and then we'll ask Dave what he thinks. But I would just say that I was really wanting season 2 of Strange New Worlds to give us a truly great episode, and I was hoping that this would be it. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it is. I'm not sure if this stands on like the same level as say like I know the big ones it gets compared to is the Drumhead and Measure of a Man. I don't know. It might be on that level for me. or it might be, not quite that good, but like really close. Like some of the episodes I think of, Distant Origin with the dinosaurs on Voyager. It was kind of a story about creationism versus evolution, but on a larger level, like society and dogma and stuff like that. And I always thought like that was like a really solid episode that had a great presentation of this social dilemma it was trying to explore. So this might be like a little bit more on like that level, but that's still really good. I noticed like this episode has grown on me the more and more I watch it. I didn't quite know what to think when I initially checked it out, but on repeat viewings, I just noticed more thoughtful touches here and there. A lot of smaller things, a lot of subtle things that would, easily go over my head if I didn't, watch it a second time. But just the dialogue, there's a lot of really carefully chosen words that I think are there to parallel things going on in real life. Something like, Dave, you were talking about how they were kind of using some of the coding and A Broken Circle last week. Apelia talking about like coming out as a lanthanite and stuff like that. Like, they were trying to connect like these dots to.
For sure. And this episode had talk of passing Illyrians or augments.
Yeah, so I guess one of the criticisms of this episode might be that it kind of doesn't commit to a lane. It kind of feels like a big umbrella that can be used to represent vast different marginalized people and those struggles. But the more that I watch it, I think, oh no, this definitely does focus a little bit more on queer issues in recent years and the LGBT community, and I think largely like the trans community. There's strong echoes of don't ask, don't tell in here with when gay people were restricted from serving in the military in the United States if they were openly gay. But there was also recently like a ban on transgender people in the military. A lot the talk about like modification that it is disturbing to some people, but these people it's important, stuff like that. So I think it was definitely leaning more onto recent trans and specifically and but larger like LGBT issues. And I definitely see how like other marginalized people can find themselves relating to stuff in here. And me and Dave are going to come at this as two straight white guys who want to be good allies to everyone. But I should remind everyone that we're doing a second stream on the Tex-Trek YouTube channel. People come in on Thursdays. We have some other voices, and we had a great diverse panel last night talking about this episode. So people want like a little bit less of a structured deep dive discussion, but a little bit more just kind of general conversation among a group of people, just expressing their reactions and quick thoughts to one another. You can find that on the Tex-Trek YouTube channel on Thursday nights. But yeah, we had several, we had queer people, we had people of color, at least one Jewish guy. So yeah, we had a bit of variety talking about this, and I encourage people to check out those chats on Thursdays. Dave, what do you think of this episode, though?
It's the episode I wanted the first episode to be. Sort of. Actually, that's not quite true. No, I really like this episode. And I did definitely like it more than the season opener. I think I said something last week like I wanted more talky talk than fighty fight or something like that. And I got that, like in such a big way that I thought it was very nuanced and it was an emotional episode, and it managed to critique Starfleet without being, making them just the bad guys. But I have to admit, a full-on trial episode is not how you kick off a season. So I kind of understand why they didn't open with it.
Yeah.
That said,
I get the desire of liking this more than the first, but I don't know. That kind of I get why they would want to start with that one.
Yeah, me too. I can say I wish I had liked the first episode a little better. I did still like it, but I wished I'd liked it more. This one I really liked. Like you, Fathery, I may be like wavering on like, did I love the episode? I was moved several times throughout it. I thought it worked really well as a courtroom episode. Like it had traditional courtroom surprises, tensions, reversals of fortune. One or two moments of humor, not too many, but one or two that were pretty good. I also, something I thought about the second time I was watching it was that I kind of like that the three sort of leads were all women in the episode. It's not that there was like not some guys in the mix, but you had Rebecca Romaine as Una, you had Captain Battelle as the prosecutor, and Nira as the defense, and they got to really command the whole episode. Trek's traditionally been, pretty forward thinking about, gender diversity, but it's nice, in the same way
except for on Enterprise when we took like a big step back.
that's true, but in the same way that it was notable to have scenes in the 90s in DS9 that had exclusively black characters on the screen, exclusively people of color. I liked that this one had so much interaction between women on the episode, and I thought the actresses were doing just a bang up job. They were killing it.
Yeah.
But
really good performances.
But yeah, I liked that it was a story with some depth. Valerie, you mentioned that it is kind of open to interpretation. You can look at it as commenting on different persecuted minorities, and I think that's true, and I think there is some strength in sort of having a somewhat general take on it at times, which is like the strength that the X-Men has always had. Like, you can like the X-Men if you think that they're a stand-in for the queer community, for people of color, or if you just kind of feel like I'm just kind of a nerdy different person, I'm a kind of an outcast or whatever, the X-Men was there for you too. And so I think on one level you could almost critique it for not being more specific, but I also think there's a strength in that, and maybe we can dive into that a little bit more as we go along. I noticed things like I really like the score in the episode, which reined in the kind of adventure side for something a little more melancholy and sometimes even ominous. To me, it was almost like just scene after scene that I liked, and I would actually say for me it was a great episode. Will it stand up to some of those other courtroom episodes, the best of the best? I got to think about that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, because I still want Strange New Worlds to get, one of those like god tier level episodes.
Sure.
Because they haven't done one yet, unless this was it. Because TNG didn't do one until Measure of a Man. That was the example I gave last week.
But that was Measure of a Man was what season was that?
2.
So that's pretty quick, arguably, even though they had also giant ass seasons.
Well, let's go ahead and get into our episode breakdown. Let's just start off talking about the opening. We some flashbacks. We don't know the full context, but we see young Una. Then we get her lawyer recruited. Just like with the Una flashback stuff, man, like that broken leg injury that she got. We later learned that it was because I guess there was a fight between two boys because one accused another of being I should mention everyone's gonna make fun of how I say Illyrian because I don't know. I do like the hard I on the. It's the same way like I say like Italian and people like get mad at me like I don't. This is, like people in Texas talk like that sometimes, but I guess being called like an Illyrian, that's like the ultimate like worst slur. Like like the equivalent like when I was growing up, it was a very homophobic time when if someone might call you like a homo or something like that, and it's like a major insult back then. I think today, if you call if a kid calls another kid a homo, it'd be like, who cares, But
it's lower level. Yeah, it's kind of become more generic.
But this episode, these dudes were going ape shit on one another. If they like busted her leg open like that, like how, like that,
yeah,
that's almost some of that like Star Trek loves to be like a little brutal these days. Like, like when Shaw busted up his leg on the Titan in Picard season 3.
Yeah, to showcase some special effects that aren't just lasers. They're like, look, we can show what do you call it, compound fractures or whatever. But they did to take your point about the Illyrian being used as like almost like a racial epithet or homophobic slur. It's because we, the Trek viewer, haven't really encountered that. They had to take us on that journey in this episode. They had to get to ultimately to Una on the stand recounting these stories, and us kind of finding, I think certainly elements of our earthly history to compare it to as we're watching and think, oh right. And I think the broken leg, it's like it's actually, I think even that slightly gory image, it's like it sort of sends home that this is more than just a mild insult, or the old thing that would lead parents to be like, oh, sticks and stones may break your bones, but words won't hurt you, which is not true at all, actually. Words can, cause, of course, tremendous harm.
But the plea deal they offer her, it sounds pretty good. Like, okay, we will just let you be free. You just can't work in Starfleet anymore, and we don't want Starfleet to look bad, so we'll cover all this up. If you've watched the episode already, like, oh, Una is actually doing this to herself on purpose, which that was something like I wasn't sure if I could get on board with the first time I watched it. But if you go back and watch it a second time, her actions, I guess, make like a little bit more sense. I still don't understand why she would keep that a secret. Like.
Oh, right. Right. Arguably, it did drag a lot of people into chaos, too, and, kind of threw things into turmoil on the Enterprise. It works, I think, in a trial episode because it's kind of a neat reveal, wherein she ends up actually having agency that we didn't realize she did. She's like, I decided I needed to come out and I wanted to put at risk my career in order to be who I really was with my friends and all that. And so is it kind of unlikely, would she really have done it that way? That's, it's kind of big dramatic decisions. And I do think it works for something like Star Trek, but it's a little bit of a stretch.
Like, why wouldn't she tell everyone from the beginning? Like, why wouldn't she tell, like, her friend? Like, I guess, was she trying to appear more sympathetic and, like, look like, oh, look how persecuted I am, like someone ratted me out? I mean, because I think that kind of would undercut it.
I think it was almost more like she wanted, once she did it, and maybe she even did it kind of spontaneously at some point, decision one night, after agonizing over something, feeling like she was hiding out for too long. She did it, and I think in her mind she was kind of like, it doesn't matter how it happened. She wasn't really expecting it to be uncovered, and she was like, I want this to be decided. I want to see if Starfleet can live up to its ideals. That's more important to me than the why of it. So I think she almost didn't care about it. She just she was compelled to do it.
I was kind of confused the first time I watched also because she tells Captain Batel, I don't want this guy representing me. He works for you. And I was like, oh, like her Starfleet attorney, like, serves under Captain Batel or something? That seems weird. That seems like a conflict. But no, I think what she meant was, like, works for you as in, like, he's Starfleet. I want, like, a civilian attorney. I want someone who's, like, not in Star. I want a Samuel T. Cogsley, who, by the way, they don't mention him at all. And I think that was kind of bold. I kind of applaud that, like, they were able to resist and create, like, this new character instead.
They didn't do the small universe thing.
Someone is going to write a book about Nira and Cogley together at some point. I'm sure someone's already pitching it. I know those dudes are already, like, chomping at the bit to tell that story.
Big courtroom case with the two great litigators of the era.
Yeah. But no, she wants a non-Starfleet attorney, so Pike risks his life. He's like basically, like, only has a few breaths of oxygen left in his oxygen tank, but he goes to recruit Una's old childhood friend Nira, who happens to be a phenomenal civil litigator.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think of Pike, really sticking his neck out? Was he just gonna straight up die for this? Like, if they hadn't, like, okay, you can have some oxygen.
He probably could have gotten an emergency beam out or something like that. Also, you would think their masks might be a little bit better, just against almost anything but, like, raw acid rain coming down on your face or something. But yeah, like, Star Trek is also a place of big ideas, and what they wanted to show was, given his relatively small screen time, that Pike was willing to really go to bat for her. He put his health on the line. Maybe that's one of those reasons why she probably should have told him that she turned herself in. I liked that he in a way, Father, when you were talking about how good Riker was being at being a first officer in Picard season 3, in a weird way, it felt like he was being first officer to Una as if she was the captain in this one, where he's like, I'm going to do everything I need to do to keep her where she needs to be. And, that included, in his conversation with, is it Nira?
Yeah.
The lawyer? Yeah.
Nira Katul.
He appealed kind of first to kind of like, I'm going to say sort of more high-minded stuff, but then I really liked, and this was something that I saw throughout the whole episode that I liked, was sort of an acknowledgement of somewhat brutal pragmatism, where he's just like, hey, if you're the person who wins this, you could call a lot of attention to cases that you might otherwise be lost.
Yeah. You have 10 cases that got thrown out for not sufficient evidence, so you might be able to revisit those,
and they shouldn't have been, right? And I was like, it's not dirty tactics, it's just pragmatic and dropping a little bit of the Starfleet idealism.
But he found a lane where their agendas aligned, so
right.
It was good.
So I just got the episode off onto a good foot with me, this scene.
And I'm not really sure, like, if the planet that she's on, because that's in that same nebula, so I'm not really sure if that's supposed to be like the same planet that Una grew up on, but it looks kind of different. But I think it might be a different planet, or things radically changed, because we know that, like, Una's planet, they wanted to become part of the Federation. They agreed not to do more genetic modification. There's like that provisional Federation, like the provisional government thing going on there. But, this planet that we see Nira on at the beginning of the episode, like, they're clearly like, no, we don't care about, like, non-Illyrians. Like humans can't even breathe our air. Like, we want to just genetically modify ourselves till the cows come home and do our own thing, and we don't care about the Federation. So, I don't know. I would have liked a little bit more, I guess, details on well, first of all, like, is this the same planet? Or are they just like neighboring worlds in like the same nebula?
Yeah, I guess in my head it was, but I also didn't think about it too much. By the way, I like the comment from Joel that Pike took a crappy breather on purpose. That's his 3D chess. And I think that's a very reasonable interpretation. Yeah. I think that, that guy could have come down in an environmental suit if he wanted, but he wanted to pressure and he wanted to get seen that day, that hour. But he was willing to put his health at risk. Probably could have gotten out if he needed to, though.
Yeah, I see people in the chat are disappointed in the oxygen mask, but they probably don't have great oxygen masks on this planet to give visitors. Like, they don't want them to hang out for too long.
But don't you think, Fathery, that he might well have chosen that very intentionally?
Sure.
I mean, they could have made a point of it.
I like that. I like Joel's theory. I like that.
Somebody on the Enterprise, if we saw him beam back, might have said, like, there's better breather units, and he might have, he could have said, I know, just like that, and we would know exactly that he was rolling some 3D chess.
Well, I guess let's talk about like the road to the trial. Pike and Battelle have some tension, so they are still seeing each other somewhat regularly. I know Anson Mount uses the word girlfriend, describing her. I don't know what their exact relationship status is. I think they have like some form of open relationship, but it seems to be like an ongoing thing. So
it seemed like what it looked to me from the outside was a bit of friends with benefits, but like pretty close friends. That said, that side of it doesn't really crop up in this episode, other than it's clear they have a personal connection to each other.
Yeah, she barges into his quarters when he's in like the middle of dinner, so like
right. And she's mad that she's in her mind, she's kind of didn't choose to be where she is. She's kind of trying to work within Starfleet strictures. And she's trying to do the best she can for the first officer of her boyfriend or friend with benefits or whatever, and it's not working out. She pulled all
these strings, like she like bent over backwards to get like this amazing plea deal, and then it got just like thrown back in her face.
Fathery, she should have been the person really pissed when Una revealed she turned herself in, because she's like, "Do you know what I did?"
Yeah. all those favors I called in,
Yeah.
like, that I'm never going to be able to get back.
Yeah. She's got people pissed at her now and stuff.
But I thought they did a good job. It was a good writing move that I applaud to create a co-counsel who they could make more of a dickhead, more of an asshole, so that we kind of blame him for being the bad guy and can forgive Battelle. Because at the end of the episode, the writers are going to want the audience to be able to forgive Battelle and like her again.
Right.
So that, I don't know, the Gorn can kill her in the season finale, and then like Pike will go to war with the Gorn, and whatever happens.
They better not do that. They better not be that cheap.
I think I think she's in the trailer looking up at like the Gorn attack ship when it arrives. So.
Yeah. Well, they did kill off who was Jason Isaac's girlfriend,
Admiral
right?
Cornwell.
Didn't she self-sacrificed?
Yes.
Yeah. Also a bad idea, by the way. I don't think. I'm hoping they won't do it.
I was okay with getting rid of her.
I like getting rid of her. What are you, a mobster?
I like Vance and April both as better admirals than Cornwell. So.
Yeah, I guess I would say I don't need them to be killed off to move the spotlight to another admiral. But you know what I liked about what's the name of the Vulcan guy? Vice Admiral something. Pasalk.
I don't think he's a vice admiral.
Oh, I don't know. I thought
did they give him a rank?
I thought it was something like that, but I don't know. I'll look it up in a minute. But one of the things I think that was clever about him, aside from like, it led to a really good scene where at the talking at the what do you call it? Not the bar. What do you call it?
The mess hall.
The mess hall. But because he does a lot telepathically, he always seems almost like, you can feel this level of power and kind of quiet strength and judgment from him. Like he's almost like this. The Vulcan. Pasalk. He feels like a visual representation of the patriarchy, just judging it all and supremely powerful in his scenes. So
is this because sometimes I never know what you're talking about, but sometimes you call the Vulcans in Star Trek Enterprise patriarchal.
Sure, yeah, patriarchal in that sense of being like a father who expects people to defer to him, who expects his orders to be obeyed, unquestionably. So yeah, that is absolutely the term I mean to use. And I feel like he conveyed that in a way that was interesting in the sense that he wasn't like snappish at people. He wasn't a real demonstrative guy, but yeah, he played. He was the villain of the episode if there was one, and he kind of did it in an interesting and different way.
But yeah, like they're coming after Una pretty hard. They went from, okay, you will just kick you out of Starfleet, but then you can go live free, do whatever the hell you want, just be a normal Federation citizen. They went from that to, oh, actually, we're going to stick you in a penal colony for 20 years. So they went from like, okay, you'll just be fired from your job to, oh, you're actually going to do 20 years hard time.
By the way, Valerie, according to Memory Alpha, he's a vice admiral.
Cool.
But yeah, they're offering up like a serious ass thing. Why did they say was it to make an example out of her at this point?
I mean, just like in real life, if you turn down a plea deal, then normally they come after you pretty hard. So
yeah.
But they also said they were kind of embarrassed that Starfleet had made a mistake. And that played a big role. Speaking of court-martial, the TOS episode court-martial, very similar in that episode. They offer Kirk, like, hey, we're just going to drum you out of the service, and then, no one will bring this up again. And then Kirk was like, no, this didn't happen. I'm being framed. I'm going to fight this. And they're like, okay, but if you fight us, we're going to come against you hard. So, you might not want to do this. But, that's a... that felt pretty realistic. There's also, when Battelle is coming after Una all hard like that, she has a conversation with Pike in the mess hall where she talks about how, like, if you testify, then it's going to get yourself in trouble. Mm-hmm. And, the best thing for you to do is just, stay out of this. You're not going to be able to help her. Pike wants to be like the ally, the friend the big brother to Una.
I love when she pokes fun at him for his inspiring speeches.
Yeah.
A little wry bit of humor in there, but she's being very serious about it. And I was like, well, both Una and Pike wanted to take the stand, and for various reasons. And she rightly says, like, no, that would be bad strategy for both of them. And I like that they're both smart enough, of course, that they're like, you're right. This could actually go very bad for us.
I did laugh I laughed out loud. Probably like the only time I laughed out loud this whole episode. But Mbenga and Ortega's watching the Vulcan argument, confrontation, outburst that Spock calls it.
Yeah.
I thought that was like really funny. It's similar, Dave, the Lower Decks episode, Trey's Douche, when we met the Vulcan character T'Lyn, who, like she would just have like a slight, emphasis on a word in a sentence. And then the other Vulcans would be like, these outbursts are outrageous, T'Lyn. Like please learn to control yourself.
Yeah.
It worked just as well here in live action. It's kind of funnier because you don't expect it. And Mbenga being the Vulcan expert, that matches with what we know of him from the original series, that he did his internship or whatever on Vulcan. Not only does he know their medicine, but he learned the culture a little bit. And the funniest part was, Spock's apology. Like, I'm sorry you had to witness that. But then how Ortega's and Mbenga are like, no, we understand. We won't say anything. And they play it straight for Spock's sake. And then, like, after he leaves, they just can't help but yeah, they just cheese up and start grinning and laughing. And they don't do that a lot in shows and movies and stuff, where they show like the characters actually laugh at the joke. But yeah, I mean that's real life. Sometimes funny shit happens and you just like look at each other and smile and laugh at it.
Yeah, and sometimes you laugh because you yourself said something funny. Yeah, that was a good moment. It felt real and legitimately funny. But also, Mbenga provided, since we aren't going to see Pasalk talk much, he gave us the exposition we needed to know. Oh yeah, this guy is a hard ass.
Dave, you picked up on some, I think some clever ways they were injecting the world building of the exposition. Your instinct should always be to show, not tell. But sometimes you're just going to have to tell. You only have an hour to do the story. But the same as how you pointed out, oh yeah, they had to like really hammer in the oppression of the Illyrians, in order to sell that, because it's stuff that we hadn't seen a ton of. There's a little hints of that in season 1, when La'an is calling Una like a augment monster, like way she says like augment, like she puts like a lot of stink on it, like God damn, like I hope no one ever calls me anything the way that La'an called Una augment.
Yeah, no, it's true. She can lean into it when she wants to.
Well, let's talk about the trial, the heart of the episode, the proceedings, everything leading up to, I guess, like the big legal victory. But starting off, we have to meet the judges. They have like the preliminary meeting with the judge advocate. So we saw her in her office, and then we get these other two judges. We got a Vulcan dude and a Tellarite dude. I don't know what, they don't have like a ton of presence, but I kind of liked them. What do you think of them?
Same thing. I felt like they made a wise decision to, I think this is kind of, they could have, I suppose, had a single person making the ruling, made it a little simpler. But, they were there to kind of as a show of procedure and structure of it. But yeah, they didn't actually get a lot of time. They, occasionally did the thing a traditional judge does. Hey, move along. What's this line of questioning all about? What are you doing? I think last week when we talked about there being a Ferengi guy, I was like, oh, I want him to be a fire and brimstone Judge Judy type who's laying down the law. Yeah, sorry, not Ferengi, but Tellarite. But like, yeah, when I saw actually how seriously they were treating the episode, I think they wanted to let their themes be treated with really kind of utmost seriousness, and for it not to be kind of like veer into any sort of campiness. No, my cousin Vinny here. So they needed the judges to be kind of sober, serious judges who just kind of did their job, and I thought that was the smart choice.
I also liked how a lot of the episode was spent seeing the Enterprise crew spectating on a, they're just like watching on a TV
Yeah.
from Pike's ready room. But it felt a lot like the Menagerie. Speaking of Pike, which was the first
Yeah.
episode of the original series I ever saw, was the Menagerie Part One. So I kind of got to start on Captain Pike, the OG Star Trek captain in the original series. But
Father, they sort of work. It occurs to me a little like a Greek chorus in a play or something like that, kind of helpfully revealing certain things. Like, if you got a little lost in some legal jargon or you weren't quite sure what was happening, then, when, say, Ortegas said, oh, why did she go after Captain April? That's not even what she's supposed to be there for. And he looked bad, but it didn't help Una. Like, some of that stuff worked actually pretty cleverly as exposition, in case you were just not quite getting, all of the courtroom legalese stuff. Or you would just see somebody's face fall a little bit. Or there was that moment of tension, of course, when Spock was like, I do think she was hiding something.
oh yeah,
the other funny scene in it. But yeah, I think they got a lot of good use out of the spectators. Aside from the fact of just showing, yeah, her crew was interested. They care about Una. I really actually liked the structure.
It was fun seeing their reactions. Like I kept seeing like Just Bush would she'd like look over at Spock or like look over at Pike and just I don't know. It was they were just a fun, watchable cast, and the editing, how it would like cut back and forth to the reactions was well done. This episode really was like it was the dialogue was written very well, like very purposefully, like the words were chosen with like a lot of care and precision, not just for the allegory purposes or like social relevance purposes, but just storytelling.
Yeah.
And then the editing was pretty impressive too. So it was well made.
When you have a big ensemble like this episode had, and just like lots of supporting people running around in the background too, what's interesting is to like sometimes go back and watch, and like every single character, when you see them, you should be able to kind of like, if you know what their deal is, to see just what their story is in the moment. What's Ortega's feeling about this? What's Nurse Chapel feeling about this? Even if you kind of like, they're not the subject of the scene, you should be able to look in the background and kind of see how they're feeling about it. And I think the episode was pretty concise about that. Well blocked.
I love the April testimony because they think that they're going to, screw over Una by bringing in this witness who would, put out a good faith effort to be, give a friendly testimony towards Una. April is on her side, but they're gonna bring this guy out, like her OG champion, the guy who sponsored her membership into Starfleet, and get him to say on the record in the courtroom that was a mistake. He should never have brought her into Starfleet.
Yep.
And the way that Nira goes after him by getting him to admit to like, oh, so you wouldn't break the rules then, but you would break the rules at X and Y and Z,
Yep.
all these times you're breaking the Prime Directive. And she gets that, she pisses off those judges so much. And it's fun to like watch them get their panties in a wad. And she gets that entire testimony thrown out and stricken from the record.
Yeah,
she embarrassed Starfleet. That was a boss
that was
move.
hardcore.
Yeah.
I thought they struck a good balance in those scenes because I want Starfleet to be this pretty good agency, and I certainly don't mind it being flawed, but I want them to be like pretty good. And when you get to that thing where you're like, hey, aren't you guys a bunch of hypocrites? Like you'll break the Prime Directive for this, but you won't do that. I think that you have to like kind of tread carefully so you don't really like make out that they're just awful people, but you do show that there's like, she often used words like, oh, she like Nero would say, I think the Federation or Starfleet has unintentionally or perhaps unknowingly become persecutors. And she would point out that they've kind of let themselves be blinded by the angst and the pain of the eugenics wars, and that led them down this path. Now, maybe she's giving them more credit than they deserve. Maybe it's like, hey, you can grow up and mature, but she gave them sort of that out sometimes, the hey, I see how you got here, but yeah, I generally like the calling out, and I thought it was also, for purpose of the episode, sound legal strategy.
But I also love when April was like, you tell him Pike when they're having drinks, and he's talking about like how much he respects Una, and he talks about like oh yeah, remember how great she was at the Marcel disaster in 2248. Like, too bad the court didn't get to hear about that. And April is pissed at Pike because Pike brought Nira into this, so that like total embarrassment that he received, he's kind of like, yeah, so that asshole who just grilled me and made Starfleet look terrible in front of everyone, like, that was your idea? Like, you're the one who brought her into this? Like,
yeah, there's a lot of complex...
How does this even help our friend Una? Like, like, I didn't get to say, like, all the good things I was going to say about her, so what are you doing?
There's a lot of complex emotions going on in this episode, and people who would otherwise be allies are kind of at odds. And it is Nira who ultimately is kind of doing the three-dimensional chess thing. She's the most three-dimensional chess of anybody there.
That's funny. She has that conversation with Pike in her office when he kind of gets one up on her. He's like, I'm right. It makes sense for you to take this case. Yeah, you have bad blood with Una, but think of all the good you can do. Think of the soapbox this will give you for your agenda. And she's like, you're a real piece of work, Pike. Like, she's kind of like, oh yeah, like you're good. You're a good manipulator. Yeah, you're right. Like, you argued your case well, but I mean, she totally brings her own in this episode. She wins the episode. This is her victory.
Yeah.
The other testimonies we have.
Good point
witnesses?
From. Sorry to interrupt, Father. I was just going to say, good point from Sohail in the audience about when Pike takes April's taken drink and downs it himself, and just their expressions throughout that. That's some good work, and everybody was stressed out in this episode.
Yeah, no, I liked that, and that was fun. It felt believable. It was like. I understood why April was being a dick, and I understood why Pike would be like, I'm just going to chug all of this right now. The other testimonies, we have like the character witness stuff. So these are witnesses that the defense brings on, right? Were they chosen by
character witnesses? Yeah, has to be chosen by Nira.
So, but they do get cross-examined. But okay. Yeah, we have La'an and Spock and Mbenga. What another subtle thing they do in this episode that I appreciate, they didn't like beat us over the head with it, is Mbenga says about Una. He's like, yes, she's discreet and empathic and knows how to keep a secret, and yeah, like, she kept the secret that he was hiding his kid in the transporter. But they don't say that specifically. It's just like they just assume the audience, like, oh yeah, if you care about that, you'll remember.
Mm-hmm. The structure of these the character witnesses, I thought, of that scene was good because it sort of moves into a montage format where they're intersplicing their stuff, so you can kind of see sometimes the same question asked of them, and they're just real quick cut to the next person's response, cut to the next person's, and it kind of gives a little energy, and a break from the scenes where people are having very serious dramatic stuff.
Yeah, the more we talk about it, the more I'm impressed with the editing in this episode.
It was really good.
Spock's testimony also really echoes how he testifies at Kirk's trial in court-martial when he's saying like yes, like, this would be like a grave mistake. This officer is a tremendous advantage of Starfleet to have among our ranks. La'an talking about how like all the people I saved, I never would have saved if this woman hadn't have been in Starfleet to save me. Then I guess finally they save Una for the very end. So, and yeah, I guess like my criticism of the episode would be it does feel a bit forced and inorganic for her to hold the reveal of like, I turned myself in for the very, like, why would, like, if you ever like go on trial and you have like an attorney there to represent you, the first thing you do immediately is the lawyer tells you like, okay, tell me everything you did. I need to know everything so that we can build like the best possible case. Like,
but they're all a drama about a trial always takes dramatic license with it.
Yeah, but I think that's
too much of a stretch.
Too much of a stretch. Yeah, totally. But I guess when Nira does figure out, like, oh, you turned yourself in, it wasn't Lon, it was you, then she's like, okay, now I'm gonna let you testify, and she figured out the I don't even know if I would call it a loophole, but just like, yeah, let's just focus on both interpretations of the law equally. Uh, but the
I think. Well, okay. Well, we'll get to this sort of big reveal in a minute, or maybe we should now. Do we want to talk about like what wins the case for her?
but before that, I guess it's like
Sure.
the reveal of like, oh, it was like Una who turned herself in. Lon was investigating that, thinking like, oh, is this somehow my fault? Am I the one who got her in trouble? Did someone get
Yeah.
my log entry?
I thought
And
that was kind of a neat subplot that was a suspense subplot that led to, I thought, a great scene with Uhura
yes,
where I was like, yes, this is so cool. Uhura is not willing to
violate civil liberties.
violate civil liberties even for the right thing. And sometimes in any of these fictions, including Star Trek has done it too, they'll do the, well, we know we're in the right, so it's okay for us to do
Yeah.
it, you know?
It's okay
And
for Batman to spy on everyone. 'Cause,
sure,
he's
it's
got to stop the bad guy.
exactly. And she's like, hey, you know what? Do it another way. She's like,
Yes.
I am not going to let you hurt this, hurt me and yourself, and, by doing this. I loved it.
Yeah, I love the episode rejects the notion of like, oh well, the only way to win is to be just as terrible and just break as many rules and principles and just be a big old hypocrite. Like I'm all for doing the right thing regardless of if it is legal or not, as this
Mm-hmm.
episode is very much also on that same page. But yeah, like that doesn't mean like go be a bastard also because someone's being a bastard to you.
Right.
Uh, but I guess like Una's testimony that's needed just to get all the context, the qualifications for asylum and all of that
Right.
stuff. But yeah, we get her memory alpha page gets a few paragraphs during this testimony. They go into a lot of her childhood. They talk about what it was like, growing up in this colony that was was trying to be part of the Federation, or I don't know, maybe by the end it is part of the Federation. But the I don't know. How do you feel about like the level of discrimination that she describes? Like, do you think that was believable, or like did that seem like
Well,
kind of
let's say I'm
too
trying to think.
barbaric?
Was this was under Starfleet supervision? They had what brought them in? Like, you're talking about she was like on a colony that split into two, right?
Yes, but
Ultimately,
it was under provisional Federation supervision.
okay.
So
You know what? I can buy that. I don't know where they are, like, within the quadrants and all that stuff. Like, in other words, if it's considered sort of a little on, like, outlying, territory or not, I think it'd be better if it was, because I felt like that Starfleet presence wouldn't be real strong, and they might have a weak provisional government. They didn't get into that level of specificity, but, could a provisional government, inadvertently oversee or through bad actual just bad governance, could they oversee that kind of stuff? Yeah, I could kind of see it. I think it's okay to go ahead and have the Federation have some sort of major flaws sometimes, as long as, like Una says, they are striving towards betterment.
yeah, and I think that was the depiction of the future that Roddenberry was aiming for. I always talk about how like it's kind of weird to talk about what Gene Roddenberry's vision was because it did change over the years. He was a different person in the '60s than he was, when he passed away in the '90s. But the common theme, I think, until I don't know, he got kind of weird in the late '80s. But when he thought everyone needed to be perfect, and no child would grieve when their parent died. And
Right,
so,
right.
but a few mini strokes before he was saying stuff like that, I think he was more on board of the idea of like, yeah, humanity won't be perfect in the future, but will be becoming more and more perfect. And I think like the message of Star Trek isn't like, look how great we're going to be. It's like, oh, we can get really good and like continue to get better and better and better. and that's something that
Mm-hmm.
we should strive for. And I think that's something that this episode embodies very much so. And I think it is important of Star Trek to, yeah, it is good on occasion to be critical of the Federation. It would be a dystopia if like you weren't able to, criticize the authority and question it and improve
Sure.
it. It should always be improving. Something that our friend Jessie Gender, when we had her on the, oh, by the way, people should check out her review of this episode. She really liked this one.
Oh, I will absolutely do that. I always like Jesse's stuff.
But we had her on the show years and years ago, and we were talking about how like some of these episodes that were very progressive for their time, but not so much these days. She said that's actually kind of a reason to celebrate, because that means like, oh, we thought we were progressive, decades ago, but like, look, we've gotten way better because now we're like, oh, there's still problems here. So the fact that we're able to, to look at something like from TNG, like the episode Outcast, which was a kind of a big milestone at the time for at least it opened my eyes to a lot of issues. But yeah, I mean, like it's kind of dated. It has problems now, but that just means that society has gotten better.
Right. And I think that's a great point. Um, if we look back and we're like disgusted with how they did something, that would be one thing. But it's like, oh, only a little progressive, or progressive in a kind of awkward, cringy way a little bit. That's still some forward movement. It just didn't get as far as we are now. Father, I wanted to mention Joel. This is a D&D reference. Sorry for people who don't know D&D, but I think it's a very good summation. He said that in Star Trek, all the heroes are chaotic good, and Starfleet is lawful good. For people who don't know what that means, Star Trek has a bunch of alignments that you pick for your hero, and chaotic good is kind of that like Robin Hood thing. You're a good person, and you will break the rules to do the right thing.
Oh, like
Lawful,
Jack Crusher before he joined Starfleet.
exactly so. Lawful good is the by the book hero. You're still a good person, but you're kind of really like a little bit more bound by like trying to maintain a sense of order is also a high priority. And anyway, that's just a really good and perfect description of the usual balance that they go for in Star Trek. I just need for them to be lawful good and not like I don't know, neutral evil or something like that. I don't want the Star Trek that's really veering, or the Starfleet that's veering bad. I need them to be doing their best.
Yeah, and I think we get that here. At least with what we saw traditionally, how the Federation was depicted in say like the original series and TNG, and then certainly in DS9, it's like, yeah, like they can make mistakes, but it's okay. It's a good thing to be able to learn from your mistakes and improve. Una like really wanted to testify at this. Like her whole point for doing any of this, turning herself in, any of that, was like she just wanted to like tell her story, I guess.
Yeah,
So
that does make sense. That if she was going to make that somewhat reckless decision that to put her own life on trial, it's actually speaks to a certain self confidence. She's like, they will see how hard I have tried to be Starfleet, and they will have to come to terms with it's unfair to drum me out. And so I actually kind of think that's a neat decision, and I feel like it works pretty well for
yeah.
the story.
And she was also tired of being in the closet. She wanted, to be able to be herself in front of her crew, in front of the people she served with.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was kind of cool, and I don't know. That's
Are we going to see her doing more Illyrian
I hope
advanced
so.
stuff
Yeah,
now,
I
kind
wanna
of
see-
like Bashir did?
Like, remember when she like picked up Hemmer and like carried him, and we were like, "What the hell? How did she just pick that dude up?" And in Ghosts of Illyria in season 1 and like stuff like that.
Right.
Like, I would like to see her doing like super powered stuff. I mean, I kind of feel like the show's like very human-y. Spock is an alien, I guess, but he's half human. Carol Kane is an alien, but she, looks like a human. Una looks like a so yeah. The more they can make these people be like a bit more alien and weird, I like that. I love
Yeah.
DS9
Playing it-
because it has so few human characters in the main cast compared to everyone else.
I suspect when they do lean towards human, that's probably like a conscious or subconscious nod to TOS, because that was so much of what they did. And a lot of the 60s ethos was about humanity and our struggles and trying to be the best and failing sometimes. But like, aliens were generally there, sometimes as analogs for other people or ways to talk about things, but it was a very kind of human-centric show. But I agree with you, Father. I think it's a good point that they should be, Strange New Worlds should also include other life forms.
Yeah. When I watch TOS, I just assume there's a bunch of like non-humans, like
just off camera,
to the side.
Yeah, I like that.
I mean, it's a big ship. We never see 400 people on it, so, but we know that they're there. One of the things that kind of caught my eye when I was watching this the second or third time was that when Una's like telling the story of her childhood and all like the bad stuff, and the city got split into two cities, so they got I saw some people compare that to like like ghettos and Nazi occupied Europe, but I think it more accurately might be Belfast in Northern Ireland. You separate the Protestants from the Catholics, but because they said like it was.
It's one of those things where you're like, when would this ever be a good idea? Why would it ever be good to take people who have big differences and split them up so that they could like. I mean, it seems like, I feel one of the reasons why something like a second civil war in America is relatively unlikely is because we're so dispersed now that you can't have like a geographic group going after another geographic group's territory. It's all shared territory. But anyway, yeah. But of course, it really happened. So continue your thought.
Yeah. And according to Star Trek canon, there will be a second American Civil War. So we'll see if we can avoid that or not. But the thing that caught my eye was when Battelle starts to get into the story and like she forgets to say objection, and then Pasalk has to like tap her on the arm and she's like, oh yeah, objection. And then when she's about to cross-examine Una, this is kind of like the boss fight. Battelle stands up to do it, and then I guess Pasalk, like, he was like, no, you're going to be too human, you're going to be too soft, you're going to buy into this emotional story about, like, like the sad girl and all of that, so you sit your ass back down, I'm gonna do this. And he comes after her with, he's not just trying to take her down, but he also wants to bring down Pike, and he's one of the most decorated, most popular, well-loved captains, not just in real life in the Star Trek fandom, but also like in universe.
He's like an Enterprise Vulcan busting out his judgment.
Maybe he's related to Saval or something. That was his dad or something. I don't know.
But yeah, right. Father, is he the first bald Vulcan we've seen? Just random question.
No, there's a few bald Vulcans that have shown up. Okay. There's a bald Vulcan admiral in Discovery, but not him. Different one. So there's a lot of bald Vulcan admirals in the 23rd century. But yeah, so that kind of does up the stakes before we get to like the climactic victory. But yeah, I also should point out before I mention that did you catch Ivan Katul, the boy who got hate crimed? He got beat up for being Illyrian. They had just learned about the Illyrians in school, but that is Nira's cousin. Una's right. It was my best friend's cousin. They have the same last name, Katul. So it's a little subtle thing. They didn't like spoon feed that to the audience. I love that.
You had to kind of infer it through some sort of looks here and there.
Yeah.
And certainly there was times when Nira's very personal questioning of Una, you're like, oh, this is about their story. You could tell.
Yeah.
But it is subtle.
Just, I guess, like, that side of it, that, like, things that I think really parallel, real life. It's like, oh, yeah, like, we were learning about this in school. So, like, that's part of what stirs up these prejudices and these biases. It's how people are raised. It's how people are educated.
Right. And also, by the way, those scenes, for all that Una is celebrated in this episode, she has to come to terms with, she was of course very young and maybe she shouldn't beat herself up so bad, but she has to come to terms with what she sees as a failure on her part, which is she accepted that she could pass as a non-Illyrian and she left behind Illyrians who continued to be persecuted and didn't stand up for them, and her family didn't stand up for them, so they kind of ended up looking out for themselves in some ways, rather understandable in those circumstances, but it's something that clearly has weighed on her, and Nira has held it against her.
And I suppose, a big part of the story is about people who can use their privilege for the good of others or for the good of your own community. And that's kind of what Nira's whole thing was. Is like, I'm gonna force you, Una, who you left me behind in Illyrian town or whatever. When we all got segregated, I couldn't go over to the passable side of town like you. But now that you've become like this highfalutin, well decorated Starfleet officer, and you have like this massive platform and the attention of the Federation, I'm going to force you to use that to our advantage, to our people's advantage, to the point where she's even getting like aggressive towards Una when the
Yep.
judge advocate is like the judge general advocate is like I warn you not to badger your own witness.
Yeah.
But yeah, we get the argument from Pasok, like, look, that is an emotional story. I know you humans get all weepy-eyed and really care about that. Fair enough. Be a touchy-feely people and feel sorry for this poor woman. But the law is the law, and we're here to talk about if she broke the law, and she clearly did. And so, understandable. I get why, he would make that argument. I understand that line of reasoning. And then Nira is like, okay, if y'all want to be by the books, then look, she did everything by the book to qualify for asylum. So if y'all are gonna, be hard asses about the letter of the law, then you gotta enforce that both ways. Which, that's something that I think is also relevant to real life, where laws are frequently enforced, like, to hurt people, to persecute people, to come after people, but they're not always. There's kind of a double standard.
For sure.
It's like, if
I think.
if,
Do you think, Valerie, that when Pasok pressed her on the law, that she was like, "I'm really glad you put it that way," like in her head, she's like, "Oh, what a funny thing."
Yeah, it's like she played him like a Vulcan lute.
She did. Nicely,
fell
nice.
right into her trap. And I like that she is carrying around a book, like Samuel T. Cogley would approve.
Yep. Jill mentions in the comments she loves that they're bringing back beautiful books like TOS had.
That is a nod. That is a nod to Samuel T. Cogley, but they downplay it. Dave, the more I talk about this episode, it really is great. Like that, like the subtlety and stuff, like those little touches, like yeah, we're gonna, if you're a diehard TOS fan and you want you want to be reminded of Samuel Cogsley, okay, we're gonna do that in like a very non-obnoxious way. Here's a law book in Star Trek. Here you go.
Right. It's almost more like his influences out there, or people who share some of his same passions, maybe. One thing I was not sure of, and I don't watch a ton of legal thrillers, but I've watched a few, and I can like the genre. I don't know if you can apply for asylum abstractly. Like, ultimately, you have to fill out a form or something.
Well, that's what I love about like the details of how they explained that, because that would have been my thinking. Like, wouldn't Pike have had to like apply for the paperwork or whatever? But they say how the process works. It's like, oh, captains are allowed to dole out that asylum status as long as eventually it goes and gets approved by a tribunal or by some Federation recognized like legal court. And she's like, y'all can do it. We already did step 1. We got step 1 done. So, it's up to y'all. Are you going to do step 2? And like, according to the rules, like, this should qualify. So y'all should go ahead and let us get that asylum. So the 3 requirements, they were the fleeing persecuted, which was, argued, the seek safety in Starfleet. She said that was, why she wanted to join Starfleet, and then, reveal themselves to authority, to a captain. So
yeah, if this was ever used on an episode of Perry Mason or L.A. Law or Boston Legal or anything like that, I hadn't seen that particularly done, and I thought it was a really cool reveal. Again, I might be like, wait, does that quite work? But man, it seemed like such a cool idea. It was so well filmed. and edited so that we got those little moments where you're like, oh shit, she's been building this case the whole time. She's been playing us all like a Vulcan harp.
And I love that it didn't end on like a technicality. Like, if it had been like the poisonous fruit thing, fruit from a poisonous tree, whatever, the evidence had been illegally obtained. I'm glad that it wasn't something like that. I'm glad that it was something that where the Federation had to look at itself and see its own hypocrisy. Like, okay, according to our rules, we have to punish this woman, but according to the rules, we have to protect this woman. So, it sounds like we have like an internal conflict within ourselves that needs to be evaluated. And that was the perfect climax to put on this story.
It was, even though like legal dramas are always kind of very, I think, subject to very specific criticism. No one's more detail oriented than lawyers. So, and by the way, I'm already kind of anticipating watching. There's that YouTube channel I sometimes watch where the dude who goes by Legal Eagle, who's a real lawyer, he analyzes movies and TV shows and talks about, do they reflect real judicial systems well? Is this something that's really done? Would that work? I'd be curious to see him cover this. I think he's maybe already covered some Trek before, like Measure of a Man, I think at least showed up. Anyway, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. But I think this is, like you said, it struck just the right note, Fathery, where she brought to the fore that the Federation is kind of at war with itself and didn't know it. And you can sort of choose an interpretation that's humane and inclusive and makes Starfleet stronger, or you can choose something that follows the letter of a law and makes Starfleet weaker and engenders distrust. And like that is a great Trek-themed finale.
So, do you think that we should see Nira again in the future? Do you think she should pop up on Strange New Worlds? Should they do more courtroom episodes?
I mean, I don't even need to think it needs to be a full courtroom episode, but yeah, I'd love to see her. They did such a good job with her. Have her do some legal advising. Have her, helping. They're bringing some new planet into the Federation, and she's, legal advisor on, civil rights issues related to some complexity with the aliens. I'd love to see her again. I don't think you'd have her every season, but maybe you should. That would be kind of cool. In short, I think that she should show for sure. What about you, Fathery?
If nothing else, I just want to hear about her friendship with Una more in the future, because I think that's a really cool thing to, if a friend that you thought you lost, if you're able to like reconnect with them. Oh, this old like childhood friend, I never thought we'd see each other again, and we had a bad falling out, but now we're gonna be friends again. I liked like the kind of like when she says goodbye in the transporter room, when they're holding hands, and she's kind of like reluctant to let go, like it like lingers for a little bit. That's kind of like the only like true like, there's not going to be any type of comment about like, oh, how you like betrayed us and you left me behind and you betrayed our entire community to run off to these people who oppress us and everything. Like this is like a true, genuine like show of like affection towards Una. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, oh, like Nira's kind of like forgiven her and they've, kind of grown together. So I would like to see
it was pretty neat
that friendship.
It was pretty cool that all their backstory was revealed essentially kind of through courtroom stuff. Mm-hmm. At no point did they really ever I don't think they much really ever sat down and talked about it, because Nira was all business with her. They would like maybe almost start to talk about it, and Nira would just get back to the case. So it's pretty neat that they could show it that way and then really have that moment of connection at the end, because it was like neither of them quite wanted to talk about it, and it was like the only way they could talk about it was through a legal proceeding.
Well, a Starfleet Sohel said that he got up and clapped when he saw it with his mom, and she thought he was a little nuts. So.
That's great. I love that Sohel.
He enjoyed this moment as well, if this is what he is talking about. Pike has that awkward, weird hug with Una at the very end, which is like, okay, they just wanted to end on like a lighthearted note. I kind of would like it if Pike would have been more like, he's comfortable hugging his first officer. He doesn't have to like be like, oh, that was weird, I hugged you.
You know what? The way I read it was, I didn't think. I mean, yes, it was kind of an awkward hug, but I think it was intentional. Like, to me, it seemed like he was trying to be professional, but then he, like he kind of broke, and he's like, his face when he hugged her, like when he was like in the actual embrace, looked like, thank God you're back, like I needed you. That's the way I read it, and it was like he actually for once he didn't have a big speech that fulfilled it, and he just engaged with her emotionally and just instinctively was like, thank you for being back, thank you. And that's what it looked like to me. He almost was a little desperate in there, but in a sweet way.
Yeah, I like that. I like that reading of it. But yeah, so status quo restored, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It was a really great episode, even if I did predict the ending last week, like I said. But uh, I just
I don't mind. Father, you and I both like surprises in stories.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why we try to avoid spoilers as much as possible. But there is something to be said for like a story doesn't always hinge on the reveals and the final act. The getting there can be a huge part of it. And so, yeah, we don't want spoilers, but if something ends up in a predictable place but gets there in a really interesting way, that's okay.
And I guess my final thoughts on this episode is just I am so happy to have Strange New Worlds back. I love a lot of Star Trek shows. I think there's other Star Trek shows in production now that are very, very fantastic at what they do, but there's something special about this one. And it's just within like these 2 episodes, just within 2 hours of the show, like of this season, as much as I enjoyed Star Trek Picard season 3, I already feel like I've gotten so much more story just out of these 2 episodes. And one of them, we thought was it fell a little flat last week. What did I say? Fine, but fun. It's like just fine,
Yeah.
but pretty fun. But yeah, even like that, I've gotten so much mileage out. I felt like I got to see Klingons, got to see that weird Crossfield class ship, got to see a trial on Earth, got to learn more of Una's backstory, just different locations, different people. Just I don't know. It's like I'm not watching a show that's like, oh, we're on like the very dark Titan set, and oh, now they're gonna go to the 10 forward bar, and it's just, oh, here's more stuff with the changelings and the Borg. It's like no, there's such a variety and freshness, and I can't wait to see what happens next week.
Yeah, one of the things the episodic format does for Star Trek is it emphasizes diversity, because that's what episodic is, and
Hell
that's
yeah.
a Star Trek theme. So maybe that's why it feels like it's so Star Trek-y.
Yeah, and it's also why I love there being a lot of shows that are very different from one another. I love how different Picard is from Prodigy and from Lower Decks and from Discovery and yeah. But this show truly does embrace that infinite diversity and infinite combinations. But with all that out of the way, let's go into the Gorn Egg section of the show. This is where I like to talk about the Easter eggs, in jokes, and continuity connections I thought were worth pointing out and mentioning. But starting off, the planet that Una grows up on, and also the planet that Nira is working on, which may or may not be the same planet. We're not sure. But that is in the Volterra Nebula, which was visited in Star Trek The Next Generation in that episode, The Chase. That's when Picard runs into his old Professor Galen, and they go and find out that all the different Star Trek alien races are related.
Yeah.
This is one that Geek Filter pointed out, and he was mentioning it earlier tonight in the chat in the live audience. But thanks for this, Aaron. He noticed that Nira's receptionist has the same style desk that Lorca had for his standing desk. Oh, there's the nebula. See, my slides are out of order. But yeah, there's supposed to be a picture of Lorca's standing desk. It just looks like this desk, but up higher, because you stand at a standing desk. Pretend that you saw that. The lighthouse courtroom. I don't know, Dave. I know you have a fondness for lighthouses.
Yeah.
But Aaron also figured out the location of where they created this, like a CGI lighthouse. It was on top of some real rocks. That is Point Bonita Lighthouse in San Francisco Bay.
I'm trying to remember. I don't. I don't think I went to that one, but I did go to San Francisco recently, and I hit up one or two lighthouses along the way. But I don't think I went to that one.
And didn't make the list, huh? Maybe
Yeah,
next
but
time.
duly noted for the future.
Speaking of that courtroom room, it's kind of weird how it looks so identical to the Starfleet headquarters of Star Trek Discovery seasons 3 and 4 because they used that set. I do wish that they had redecorated it more or just used a different set, because why would you have like that giant gaping hole in the middle of your courtroom? Aaron also noticed that like the dedication plaque for the starbase was still hanging up on the wall. So
Oopsie.
But there's a ton of nice little touches within that courtroom. I loved them, ringing that bell thing that I wish that they had been ringing in Star Trek Discovery when Michael Burnham was on trial. When we talked about that episode, we were even like, why weren't they ringing that bell from court martial? I loved that they have like the little cards that you stick in the computer. I love that they have that lie detector thing you put your hand on. And then our Tellarite judge, he is the Space Command representative. And there was a Space Command representative in court martial who was just like this old guy named Captain Lindstrom, but he sat in like the same spot. He was like to the left of the main judge. It's whatever the hell, Space Command representative. It's just some dumb thing they made up in 1966 when they hadn't figured out the Starfleet jargon. Before they even had like Starfleet, the word Starfleet figured out. I think in court martial, all they ever say is the service. They never say the word Starfleet. They hadn't come up with Starfleet. They hadn't named Starfleet yet. But
Father, I know we don't know if we're gonna get Teller Prime or anything like that.
Hashtag time for Teller Prime.
Absolutely. But I do wonder if, by reminding us in this episode of Tellarites with this small role, are they priming us for it? Maybe they're just like, hey, remember those Tellarites? You'll be seeing them again in episode 6 or whatever.
I don't know if people need to be primed for. If anything, I think like they would just like not show them. They'd be like saving them up for a surprise, but.
I'm just trying to be enthusiastic towards the possibility.
Whoever is writing episode 6 would be like, don't put a Tellarite in episode 2 because I'm using some in episode 6.
You don't have to. It's not like you're springing Tellarites on us. It's just a little reminder they're one of the big Tellarite founding Starfleet members, founding Federation members.
I didn't have time to get a great screenshot of it, so apologies to the video audience. Speaking of Tellarites, though, I love that Space Command representative dude here has a three-fingered hand. So, like Jenkum Pog or like Gav from Journey to Babel.
Yeah.
So we're bringing back the three-fingered Tellarites in live action. So that was cool. And this guy is played by David Benjamin Tomlinson, who has played a few different Star Trek aliens under heavy prosthetics recently, but most notably Linus in Discovery.
Oh, that's cool.
And speaking of Linus the Saurian, there's some wall art in the courtroom that I guess shows a bunch of Federation aliens in weird like Greco-Roman robes or togas or something. But there is a Saurian up there, I think. It's kind of hard to tell. We don't get like a great look at it and anything. I hope that there's better pictures online that surface at some point, like that people were taking like on the set. But there's clearly like some, at least one Endorian. I think there's a Tellarite, a short dude right here. That's the Saurian. I suspect is this guy. That's a Linus.
Yeah. Looks like it's either that or a slee stack.
But
in like classic Greek style togas, that is an odd piece of art. I want to know whatever the story is behind it.
And I was talking to Aaron about the stuff, and he was able to determine this is a Cation over here.
Okay. Yeah.
Cat head. And we think that this dude on the far left is a Edosian, like Eric's, although there's no third arm, but that sure looks like Eric's face.
The features do look like.
And then next to him is, I think, a Zaranite from the motion picture. So, yeah, people who are like tracking down those more obscure Federation members, I think there's some here. But
Is
yeah,
there a ready room for this episode, Father? They need to
there
do a
is,
breakdown.
there is, and they talk about this set, but they don't actually talk about this too much.
Bastards.
So, but there is another fun Gorn egg in the courtroom with Spock's testimony, as you mentioned, Dave. A little bit of levity when Spock admits that Una was hiding something, an affinity for Gilbert and Sullivan musicals. We saw he learned that when he was stuck in the elevator with her in the short trek Q&A.
That was a fun one.
And that's all I got for the Gorn eggs. But y'all heard us talk about this episode for an hour and a half. We'd love to hear whatever y'all have to say about it. So please comment. You can comment on YouTube. You can reply to my tweets on Twitter. You can sound off in the Tex-Trek Discord server or on the Tex-Trek Facebook page. We like to share people's responses at the end of our shows sometimes. Dave, if you don't mind, did we receive any subspace transmissions, as we like to call them, about last week's episode, the season 2 premiere, The Broken Circle?
We got a ton of subspace transmissions. Yeah, we were inundated with them in a good way. People, a lot of responses, generally pretty positive feelings, but a little critique in there. So I'm just going to jump right in and kind of go through these quickly so that we can cover a fair amount of them. This is, of course, in reference to the episode, the Broken Circle, which was light on Pike, but heavy on Mbenga and Chapel and Spock, feeling his emotions. Ignis says the classic Klingons are back. I know that he speaks for a lot of people in that. Someone going by
including
Chief,
us. That was our sentiment.
Absolutely. Someone going by Chief Engineer Pelia says, loved it, enjoyed it. It wasn't your standard season opener, mind you, but that gave it some originality, in my opinion. Pike on hiatus right out of the corral, interesting move. And of course, we now know that was a little bit of behind-the-scenes planning because Anson Mount is father of a new child, and they planned it so that he would have some time off. Claire Herbert really enjoyed it. Lovely dive more into Spock's character. Christy E said Ethan Peck is extraordinary. Watching Peck convey his struggles with Spock's emotions is a brilliant avenue to explore. No, I don't want a romance with Chapel, but Spock having to differentiate his feelings will be great Trek. Regarding the action sequences of the episode, Joanne Robertson, who did like the episode and compared it to Ocean's 11 as far as stealing the Enterprise, says Dr. Mbenga can really keep things to himself. I was not expecting the juice moment at all. I thought that was a good point. This guy is pretty good at keeping secrets. That's clearly a part of his character. Lance would go on to say, I liked it a lot, a good episode. I see they stole something from The Expanse with the adrenaline shots they took. Father, I haven't seen The Expanse. That's a thing on there somewhere.
I guess. I don't remember that being like a big thing in The Expanse.
Well, maybe not a big thing, but it happened. And likewise, someone named Christian says, I thought Bane was going to show up since they were using Venom.
That's what I thought.
And
I said that last week. I was like, that's Bane's Venom.
Let's see. Army Sergeant says, no matter how much meth you consume, you are not an unarmed combat master that can push through 20 Klingons, which I kind of agree.
Dave, you and I learned that the hard way.
What are we talking about?
Smoking meth and trying to push our way through 20
Oh,
Klingons.
yeah. Listen, it was a birthday party. What else are you going to do?
Yeah.
Andrew B. says, I enjoyed it, but I don't know how I feel about we were secretly super soldiers all along, both in terms of a fit with Trek and long-term repercussions of that being a truth about the crew. It was definitely unexpected. Let's see. And Sheratonis says the Mbenga and Chapel stuff was silly, otherwise good. Spotted Giraffe, who we had on just a couple weeks back, says aggressively fine, like my co-host put it. Let's see. Opinions no one cares about over on our YouTube channel, where you can also comment, of course. says, I totally support Vamanos for Ortegas should she ever make captain. And
I don't think that's what she said. I don't think that's. I know that's what the captions put, but I think she actually says vamoose.
No, because she's like Latina, right?
I know, so I think that's why they thought it was vamonos, but I think she says vamoose. But
I think he said Vamanos.
Okay, we'll have to ask. We'll have to ask Melissa Navia.
Oh, hang on. There's one other.
She's so nice. She'll probably be like, "It's whatever one you want it to be."
I've got one I'm gonna quick do. This is just a slightly longer one. One more from Dan Kiefer, 8859. Talking about, I guess, the point of view shots from the when they juice up, says augment shots. It's like Khan in a can. I don't know, fellows. I'm a little worried about this season. I'd be more worried if it was all one storyline, but fortunately, Strange New Worlds can get away with those disappointments. I really enjoyed Pelia. She was by far the best thing in the episode. Hopefully, they can use her to distract from the fact Akiva Goldsman is way too obsessed with Khan and seems to want to reduce the entire franchise to Star Trek 2. And I at least take some of the criticism, since that was some Khan-like action there. But
speaking of Khan,
yes,
I think we're getting into some Khan business next week.
Yeah.
So the episode.
What's the episode?
Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, which Dave's pointed out as a Shakespeare quote. So as our resident armchair Shakespearean, he will.
Yeah, I don't know the full speech, but I know the next line is "creeps in this petty pace." It's a super grim soliloquy from Macbeth.
But we think we're getting a Kirk and La'an time travel to maybe the eugenics war, but something in modern day. So yeah, I think it's
that sounds pretty good.
I think it's a good.
By the way, I just wanted to mention La'an had some really good scenes in the episode we just watched. She wasn't as prominent as some of the others, but yeah, she was also exploring her stuff.
There's a B story about like internalized bigotry in this episode.
Yeah, her convo with Nira about it is great.
And I don't expect to see like a ton of Anson Mount next week either. They said they didn't put him much in the first episode because he just had like a newborn baby, and he's not in the second episode much more, but he is in it for sure more. But I think the third episode is probably going to be about the same amount of Pike. But the fourth episode, I think that's going to be when we get like a big Pike centric story. So they're saving that for a while. But yeah, next week it should be Kirk and La'an and maybe Khan. Who knows? I think it's possible other 21st century people show up, but
I'd be down for a very focused episode if it's just the two of them or primarily them, but we shall see. And then for sure, if they do indeed zero in on the eugenics wars, that is an exciting thing because it's so frequently discussed in Trek,
especially
but
this
rarely
episode.
Rarely have we been in the midst of it.
If
that's what happens.
They had to talk about we're really strict about people modifying their DNA, but remember how bad the eugenics wars were? So yeah, maybe they're actually gonna show that to us. But yeah,
just like how they used that Tellarite to preview the Tellar Prime.
Folks should come back and check that out, and be sure to stop by on Thursdays and say hi to the Thursday night crew and watch the first reaction streams. Dave and I will follow up with the deep dive discussions on Fridays, also available wherever you get your podcasts. And Snoopy McQueen has arrived just in time to bless us with a very generous $5 super chat. So thank you so much, Snoopy. And everyone else, until next time, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek. And follow Valerie on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.